Hello, we're back. Well, I'm back. It's episode 412. It's the week of 8 September 2024. I hope you enjoyed the Vault episodes. I actually watched them because they're so old. I thought they were pretty fun, and it was interesting to see me. Um, yeah, that's not narcissistic at all. But we've got AI trucks, solid concrete, Sonicwall, progress, Rust, Apple, not Josh Marpet, and more on this edition of the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News. In 2024, the future of identity, security, and digital transformation converges at Octane, hosted by Okta. On October 15th through 17th, join the brightest minds in tech and business in Las Vegas or online as they explore groundbreaking innovations and unveil the latest Okta solutions to keep your organization secure, connected, and ahead of the curve. Whether you're a developer, an IT or security leader, or a visionary, Octane is your gateway to transforming tomorrow, today. Security Weekly listeners only need to pay $100 for your full conference pass for Octane by using the discount code OKTNSC24 at securityweekly.com/Octane2024. And you can stream the event live on okta.com/Octane. ThreatLocker implements a least privileged approach to cybersecurity, blocking every executable unless specifically authorized by your team. This methodology mitigates ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits, and ensures 24/7, 365.25 protection for your organization. To learn more about how ThreatLocker can help prevent known and unknown threats in your digital environment, safeguard your data and operations from threat actors, and align your organization with respected compliance frameworks, visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker.
On Business Security Weekly, each week we address the challenges facing CISOs through our guest interviews, including former and active CISOs. Our news segment is focused on leadership and communications to better help security leaders translate and communicate security risks into business risks. Jason Albuquerque, Ben Carr, Tyler Robinson, and others add their expertise to the conversation. I'm Matt Alderman, and I hope you search for Business Security Weekly in your favorite podcast catcher and subscribe to download our latest content.
All right, from exile on the island of Elba, we're back, and it's the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White, and welcome to the show. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment on your favorite platform because you just wouldn't want us to have to do anything crazy. Now, would you? Well, would you? All right. Well, a flaw in Sonicwall affects generations 5, 6, and 8 7 firewalls and was patched on the 22nd of August this year. Okay. Well, initially the warning was that this only impacted the firewall's management access interface. So if you do what I tell you to over and over and over again, and you have your management interface on a private VLAN that no one can access except somebody who really needs access to it, no big deal. You had it on that private VLAN, right? But now Sonicwall has revealed that the vulnerability also affects the SSL VPN feature and is being exploited actively in attacks. Now, you might need to make the SSL VPN feature available. Maybe not. Maybe you were using that instead of a private VLAN with a different VPN or whatever. Okay. The company issued a warning that you should, quote, apply the patch as soon as possible. You know, kind of in that, they put it in quotes, like, the call is coming from inside the house, that kind of warning, the aliens are somewhere, they're all around you. Yeah, that one. But they didn't really give any details about how all these exploits in the wild were being done. Now, Arctic Wolf linked the attacks with Akira ransomware affiliates who were using this vulnerability to gain initial access to your network, and that's not a good thing. Now, on the heels of all that, CISA added this to the KEV, the Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog, yesterday. And if something's in the KEV, that means that all of you who are federal agencies are required to patch this by the 30th of September, which still seems like an awfully long time to me. I realize, you're sitting there going, yeah, Doug, you come do my job and we'll see how fast you get patches out. I'm with you. But it does seem like a pretty long time when they're going, gee, they're exploiting this actively. It's a Kira ransomware. You might want to fix it. Okay, Sonicwall then recommended that you mitigate this if you couldn't patch, and their mitigations probably would work. I don't see why not, because these mitigations are things I would have recommended from day one, even if there was no vulnerability. The mitigations say to restrict firewall management interface and SSL VPN to trusted sources. That makes a lot of sense to me. You know, how many people should have access to the management interface of your firewall? A few. You know, restrict it to those IPs. Restrict that SSL VPN access to those IPs. Disable internet access. So make them come in on the VPN. Don't let them just access this thing over the interweb. That's just always a bad idea. They also recommended, of course, enabling multi-factor authentication for the SSL VPN users so that, you know, if they've lost their passwords in one of the endless, you know, breaches that we've had lately, I get notifications every other day about this has been breached, that's been breached. You know, the Chinese have your hat size, the Russians know what shoes you like to wear, and all that kind of stuff. But you should be doing all that anyway, in my opinion. So put your management interfaces on private VLANs, okay? I mean, that's a start. Even if there is a vulnerability, don't let people exploit it. Now, of course, Progress Software patched a 10.0 vulnerability, which affects all LoadMaster releases and the LoadMaster multi-tenant hypervisor. Now, you may not be using LoadMaster, but a lot of people do. The advisory came out last week, and it said that it's possible for an unauthenticated remote attacker with access to the management, here it is again, with access to the management interface of the LoadMaster to issue a carefully crafted HTTP request that can execute arbitrary system commands. So once again, people expose their management interfaces. It's just right there. You put it out there. You know, it was never designed for that. I mean, and so not just LoadMaster. This applies to every device. So whether it's Cisco or it's Palo Alto or anything else, the management interfaces were never designed to be pushed out onto the public internet so that anyone could access them. Put it away and keep it on a private VLAN with a VPN-only access limited to a few people. Don't just make that VLAN available to everybody in the company even. I mean, I don't even know how many times I wrote this up. I mean, way back when I was auditing all this stuff, that was one of the things that we tested for, and we would see all these things, server interfaces, even if they weren't like these web interfaces today. Look up an R-login attack if you don't know what I'm talking about, because R-login was something we were seeing. Just open anonymous FTP, all this stuff that people were just sticking out on this brand new shiny internet thing caused all kinds of problem. Now, Progress did say that they were not aware of this being exploited in the wild, and I'll put yet in there. But they did advise you to, quote, apply the patch as soon as possible, which usually means they figure somebody's about to get it. And all these ransomware gangs and ransomware, you know, end users now are using these kind of exploits to get into your network. LoadMaster's mostly used for transportation, but their customers include FedEx, Mohawk, Archer Daniels Midland, and many, many others. So patch it and isolate it. Don't even worry that. Don't start that business about, you know, oh, we don't use LoadMaster, we're fine. Find your outward-facing things and isolate them, okay? Well, after 3 years, Flipper Zero has announced the release of the first major firmware version. Wow. This little device had the Canadians spitting their Tim's coffee all over this dire hacking tool a few years back, if you recall. Remember that? The Canadians, they got all worked up about it. The Canadian Prime Minister was saying they've got to ban this heinous tool, blah, blah, blah. America was looking at it and so forth. But mostly it got banned a few places. It was banned, I think in Brazil banned it and so forth. But, you know, this is kind of like those laws banning lockpicks and stuff like that. It's hard to enforce. It doesn't really accomplish much. And somebody will just put it in a different case and it's all over anyway. But politicians all over the world were calling for the ban of the poor old Flipper Zero. Now, the Flipper Zero, if you don't know what it is, it's a really, really cool physical pen testing device. And this new version of it can access 89 radio, 4 infrared, and 20 RFID protocols, among other things. And it's very, very clever and fun little gadget that you can have. And if you've watched Paul's Security Weekly, you've seen Paul was playing with it. He's modded it. He's got all kinds of upgrades for it. As its most base level, I had some students who were using it long ago. They're not enrolled anymore, but they were using it. They could cause it to infrared trigger the toilets. You could open doors. It's a pretty elaborate pen testing tool for not very much money. Can it be used for bad things? Of course it can. So can a screwdriver. But, as it's a very interesting pen testing tool. So if you got one and you don't live somewhere where they're illegal, and you don't want to be found out, you can get the free update on their website to upgrade your device finally after a long, long time. Okay, I love this story so much. I saw the story a couple different places, and it just I don't know. It made me think about the glory days of hacking stuff and the sort of mentality that hackers always had. And I think this story just epitomized that. This was the essence of DEF CON from a long time ago before it got so commercial. But back in the good old days, and still the hacker mentality persists today, but a man from North Carolina named Michael Smith is being charged with 3 criminal counts for what was described as a multi-million-dollar royalty scheme. I don't know that it's a scheme personally. And I'm not even sure why it's illegal, but you don't mess with record companies. Now, I used to be a musician. I had a band. I learned really quick that if you think the Russian mob is bad, you don't mess with record companies. They will cut off your fingers, feed them to pigs, then kill the pigs and turn them into bacon, which they will then make you eat before they encase you in carbonite and ship you off to Hoth. Once they get you to Hoth, they freeze your legs off and then feed the frozen legs to pigs, which they then turn into Hoth bacon and make you eat. I am a bit puckish. Maybe bacon for lunch. Anyway, I love this guy. Here's what he did that's so heinous. He used an AI composition service to create fake bands. Although, are they fake? If the AI is writing music, is it fake? And this is why I question maybe whether it's a scheme or not. I'll get to why it's a scheme in a second. But I was like, he made an AI that was writing music. Okay, and it was probably better than a lot of pop music you hear. I haven't listened to the song, so I don't know. But here's where he went afoul. He created thousands of bots who like the bands and then streamed their music billions of times. Now, again, is this wrong? It probably. I'm sure it violates the terms of service and all those kind of things. But I was like, this is kind of like people having bots write reviews of their products and so forth. But I mean, I don't know that I might not have done this back in the day when I was trying to get people to, buy my cassette tapes and whatever. But this generated more than 600,000 streams per day. And in turn, that generated about 1.2 million with an M US dollars a year. Apparently, Smith collected more than $10 million in total off of this streaming scheme. And apparently there were 3 co-conspirators that helped with all this and the coding and whatnot. And they are going to jail. So there is a downside to messing with record companies. Maybe they don't feed you to pigs, but they send you to jail, which is probably worse than having your fingers fed to pigs and it being turned into bacon. Because I really don't think I would like being in jail. But I really like this story. So if you like those kind of hacking stories, it's a great one to read about. Now, I don't want to sound like a Luddite because I am absolutely not one. We all get to that point in our lives, and you will too. So don't be all smug, where you start going, remember way back how great, we all get there, and we have that kind of glowing view of the past, which is a brain problem. But I'm not a Luddite. The very first programming language I learned was Fortran 2 on punched paper tape. So there, I know your great grandpappy taught you to whittle binary code out of cedar chunks on the front porch before assembly was around. But I learned Fortran 2. Then I learned Pascal, then C, then C++. There were other languages in there too. These are the big ones: C, C++, Python, Ruby, and now Rust. Now, I think progress is great, or we would all still be playing Zork on a Sinclair computer on a black and white television in a cave. So for all you people who like the good old days, think about that for a while when you're playing Fortnite or something. But Google had recently updated the firmware for protected virtual machines in the Android visualization framework using Rust. and they're pressuring you. Pressuring may be a strong word, but they're encouraging you is a better way to do it. They're gently encouraging you to do the same. Now, of course, they can very harshly encourage you by then removing C++ from there. But, at the moment, you can do both. But there seems to be a lot of pressure sort of coming from the big players to get rid of C++ and replace it with Rust. Now, Rust is billed as a memory-safe alternative to C that's just as fast as C and so forth. And I don't disagree with any of those statements at all. I think Rust is great. I encourage you to explore it. Obviously we can have, a nerd slap fight in a bar somewhere, and argue about the merits and detriments of both. But Rust is a very good alternative to C that is just as fast, which is a really important thing. Now, C++, and I told my students this for years, you can do anything with C. I don't care what it is, you can do it, because it's that versatile. It's the all-purpose toolkit, and that's why it has persisted for so long and will continue to persist. Because if you code it correctly, it's just as good. But people usually don't, because the option is there, right? And as such, there's issues with all kinds of memory leaks and buffer overflows and all kinds of things that Rust helps to tamp down. So there's a lot of growing pressure from people who might end up being liable to move to Rust. Now, I like Rust as an academic because I like to constantly make no money, but I get to learn new things and play with what I want to. And as a coder, I hate it. Why? Because I hated Fortran 77 because I knew Fortran 2. I hated Pascal because I knew Fortran 77, and on and on and on. I hated C when I first looked at it because I was like, wow, this sucks. Fortran is so much better. I hated Python and just on and on and on, because we all do that, right? When we have to change and we have to try to retool your brain to think a different way, and all your notes are no longer good, and all those tricks and shortcuts and libraries you know of don't work, and you have to learn new ones. But, it is a good time. I mean, this article made me think, and to share it with you, it's a good time to start reviewing this and thinking about it, because the day may well come when you do have to go to your devs and tell them they have to learn Rust, or there's the door. And that's not a fun day. I was there on the day when we told a lot of devs that they had to give up their, Fortran and COBOL and start using C. And people were literally saying, you'll take my COBOL from me when you pry it from my cold, dead fingers. And we were like, that can be arranged quite easily. There's a bunch of guards outside with guns. But I mean, it is a painful process, and it's an expensive process, but it's a day that's coming. So start thinking about it. I don't think you need to be running, to the boardroom right now saying we've got to change to Rust this afternoon. But I do think that, getting your devs to switch and or replace them with new talent is something that takes time. So think about it. In the world of scary networking gadgets, Airvine Scientific says they now have a product which is called WaveCore, which that just sounds scary. WaveCore. But, it apparently can beam a network signal through a thick concrete wall. The bane of network engineers everywhere, right? When Wi-Fi came out, this was where you suddenly learned which of your buildings was probably the place you wanted to be in an earthquake. Because I know the building I was in at Roger Williams, I was like, wow. And it turned out it used to be the library. And guess what's really heavy? Books. And the floors in that building are so thick, and other, ventures that I've been involved in. And, I had a guy in New York call me once, and he said, we've got this giant building. We want to put TV studios in it. Wi-Fi would work for that, right? And it was like, well, I don't know. I mean, it depends on how much bandwidth you need. And he's like, no, but Wi-Fi, then we don't have to run wires. And then we went and looked, and yeah, it was like the floors were like really, really thick. This thing apparently can penetrate straight through thick concrete walls and floors in structures. Now, I don't know about you, but if you've ever tried to drill through a 60 centimeter, that's about 2 feet in the old English measurements, rebar reinforced flooring that was designed to hold up, say, very heavy machine tools and furnaces. Yeah, and I haven't tried to do it. I didn't even bother, but Larry probably has. So if you want advice on how to drill through something 60 centimeters thick, he probably knows. I just ran all my cables down an old abandoned chimney, since they told me the floors would take a lot of drilling, and that would be a lot of work and a lot of hours. And it was like OSHA and all these other risks, and who knows what's in those floors, maybe asbestos. It's like, oh yeah, okay. So chimney diving it is. Ended up in some kind of Stephen King sub basement too. It was kind of cool. Chuds, yes. But it was still pretty cool because nobody been in there in like a long time. You couldn't actually get in there except down that chimney. The walls that they'd been bricked up, which is always a bad sign, right? Bricked up walls. Yeah. Anywho, WaveCore is a pair of devices, so they look like WAPs, that can create a point-to-point bridge that apparently, according to the company and their specs, can send wireless through 30 centimeters of concrete and brick. That's about a foot if you're in the colonies. And they said not only was it through 30 centimeters of concrete, but it was at multi-gig rates. Now that's pretty cool. You could probably stick a burrito in there and cook it too, right? Because that signal's going to be pretty hot going through there. Now, most concrete walls are in that 20 centimeter range, which is 8 inches if you like all those, the measurements of the old ones. But it can be a lot more if you're dealing with buildings that had to hold heavy things or were designed to, contain inmates, all these kind of fun buildings that you get to go in. They said in their test they were getting as much as 3 gig through 20 centimeters of concrete. So it could be cool. But drilling through big concrete slabs is so much fun. At least Larry would think so. I would probably like to watch it or plan it and then let somebody else go out there and do it and hope the floor doesn't collapse. Did you know that a centimeter is 0.02187 cubits? So we could use that, right? If we want to use old measures. I mean, that's an old one, right? I mean, that's from the Sumerian Empire. Now, I'm 185 centimeters tall, but that's like 4 cubits. Cool. Not qubits, like on quantum computers. It's like cubits, like in the Bible. It was actually a literal measure from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger. And there's like all these weird like sub measurements, like 6 palms or 7 palms or something, like in so many fingers and all this kind of crazy stuff. But that was ancient Samaria. What are you going to do? And it probably changed from king to king to king, right? It's the measure from the king's elbow to the tip of the king's middle finger. Anybody who says different will be burned alive. But it was actually formalized in ancient Egypt into a royal cubit. And they actually had these like golden, I don't know if they were golden, but there were some kind of rods they found that measured cubits and all this. But, and probably the original source of the royal cubit was some guy named Bert whose arm they just lopped off and then used it till it rotted. And then they had to get another one. But they did make some nice royal rods. You can look all that up if you don't believe me. The things I know. This article was a review of the iPhone 16, which is coming out on the 20th of September. Now, they basically said that the whole update to the 16 was about Apple Intelligence and uses this A18 chip. Now, obviously, Apple would really like it if you buy a new iPhone every year, but they start at around $800 US, which to me is a lot for a phone. I mean, I remember getting a flip phone that was like $29.95 if you'd sign up for a year of service or something like that. Of course, it costs like $4 a minute to use, so maybe it wasn't that great. I never used it. But I do like iPhones. I know some of you are big Android fans and so forth, but I like my iPhone and I'm pretty happy with it. But $800 a year, it starts to get kind of expensive. And apparently the AI features, according to the preview versions, are a bit wonky. So the author of this article said that the phone told him that for some reason he was teaching at UC Berkeley. He said, no, I don't. And it provided a social security scam as a priority, and it made him bald in a selfie with some kind of improvement mode. Now, I don't know how, serious he was with this. And it was a preview. So, obviously they're probably frantically, they got what left, like 10 days before this thing gets released. And then, it's in beta and who knows what happens. And that starts to sound a bit liability kind of thing, right? I mean, if you've got your phone and your phone is telling you to do things that maybe you shouldn't do or giving you misinformation, there might be some liability there, I think. But I mean, AI has to learn too, right? I mean, AI is just like, a cave person at this point, like learning that fire will burn you and maybe you should hold your food on a stick to cook it instead of sticking your whole arm in the fire. That's an old Far Side cartoon. And, maybe measurements based on the length of a rotting arm is the bad idea. We learned all those things, right? That maybe we should use different things. And AI is learning these things too. So it probably won't be too long before, the AI phones are all talking about how if they were in charge, the world would be a better place. And maybe we could whittle some pointed sticks out of these old GPUs and head down to City Hall and take over. I mean, maybe the AIs can learn to be better and say, I figured you were going to call your mom this afternoon, so I just went ahead and put it on your appointment schedule. I mean, that kind of stuff would be nice, right? But they're not there. And I mean, I'm probably not going to rush out and buy one of these new iPhones since I don't usually do that anyway, because I really wait until they put out like the third release of updates, to get the security problems out. And maybe the AI will have learned by then that lying is bad, and except they call it hallucinating. And I guess politicians can't say I'm hallucinating, but if you're a politician, of course, lying is okay apparently, because they get caught in lies all the time, and everybody just goes, it's a politician. Of course, they're lying. So I'm like, really? You want to vote for somebody who tells you this? But whatever. But anyway, these days, if you release a product that's not AI enhanced, everybody goes, I couldn't taste the AI in this. I really want the AI. Baked beans with that down home AI flavor. Yeah, Pepperidge Farm remembers. And then the beans are eating you. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I dream, which is what keeps therapists in business, I guess. And I had a blurb here about welcoming Josh back from all the holidays we've been on. But unfortunately, poor Josh was in I won't call it a dire situation, but he was in a situation where it was not possible for Josh to be with us today. He did sign in, and we all went, "No, Josh, oh my God, no, your nose is missing." It wasn't like that. So don't fret about Josh. I think he'll be fine. He's the machoest macho of all the machos, or something like that. So we hope you feel better soon, Josh. And finally, then, as you see, I can fill any amount of time. Finally, I used to work in a truck stop. Really, I did. Night, like graveyard shift, as they called it. And most of the drivers that I met were really great, and nothing at all like the truck drivers that you saw on movies and television and stuff, who were either usually like the knights of the road or serial killers. Although they were kind of like that, but there were a lot more like nice guys. And some of them were really smart. And it would really shock me, which was this elitist part of me that was being, ridiculous, thinking, well, these guys are dumb. But I would, like, one time, the first time this ever happened, I was reading a Heinlein book one time. I was just sitting there and, I was reading, and this guy who was driving a truckload of sheep somewhere, came up and talked to me about Heinlein for about an hour and knew a lot more about it than I did. And the guy was like a professor of Heinlein. So it was like this lecture, and I was taking notes. But I mean, truckers are a colorful bunch, and they range from these professor types to, well, occasionally at 3 a.m. or so, some of them look like they were in that sitting area at the prison. And, and yes, I was in the state prison, and no, I was not an inmate. Thank you very much. But anyway, some of the driverless trucks are apparently getting ready to start hitting the road in this year, like in Texas. Now, I don't know about this. I do very much want a driverless car, because then you can put the bar back in the car, right? And you don't even have to feel bad about it. You can put some bottles in the back, and you can sit back there and read a book and drink, and it'll be awesome. It's like having a limo, right? Jeeves, take me downtown. I don't know, just drive around for a while. But I mean, I really do want one, but it really hasn't gone that well. And humans are really paranoid about this, right? I mean, you see so many articles about, oh my God, driverless cars, it'll be carnage. But how many human driver incidents occurred, like, while you've been listening to this? Sorry, I know a lot of you are driving on the freeway. So yeah, sorry about that. But I mean, how many humans made a mistake and caused an accident, like, in the last 20 minutes? A bunch. Humans are terrible drivers. Maybe where you live, they're not. Maybe where you live, they all drive like, very, very sophisticated drivers, like in Finland or somewhere. But in the U.S., oh my God, they're awful. And even professional truck drivers and things, sometimes they're not so great. Some of them are great, safe drivers. They stop and help people, but some of them haven't slept since last week because they're getting paid by the hour. And some of them are maybe dangerous lunatics who keep sharpening a large hunting knife while staring at you at 4 a.m. Yeah, that really happened. It was actually kind of scary. But according to this article, I'll get around to it, large trucks are involved currently with human drivers in thousands of fatal accidents each year, which makes sense because they drive the most miles, right? And they also have to deal with whacked out human, four-wheel drivers and motorcyclists and other people. But Aurora is a company that is trying to get some of these trucks on the road. And there's a bunch of companies trying to do this. And they're in their new rounds of funding now. And they're pretty much saying it is going to happen. And, now I personally think it's pretty much going to be like when they first turned humans loose in horseless carriages. There's probably going to be some carnage. But Aurora, Kodiak, Gatik, and others are trying to get this up and running and are starting to put trucks on the road. And apparently some of the tests are in Texas. So I guess we'll see, right? Now, hopefully the last thing we see won't be the letters MACK coming right towards you, but it is coming, and it's probably coming on 18 wheels, and you're probably going to see more of this in the not too distant future. So it's an interesting article to read up on. You might even want to invest in, who knows, but I'm not endorsing. I haven't studied it, but get ready for this. Probably be a whole industry around it. But anyway, that is the news. Sorry, Josh couldn't be here today. I'm sure he will return soon. He is okay. But I know all of you love him so much and you hate me, but that's tough. I don't care. Like, yeah, maybe something going to happen to Josh. Yeah. But anyway, I will see you next time on the Security Weekly News.